Three, two, one, ready to rumble. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Strategy Show. I'm your host, Simon Severino. Today, we have somebody who fixes broken prospecting processes. He's the prospecting mechanic for commercial insurance advisors. And up next, he's launching his new podcast called Prospecting to Build Trust. Welcome, everybody, Walt Goshert.
Great to be here, Simon.
Hey, Walt, what are you currently creating?
Well, just a little bit on the prospecting to build trust is what's in the works right now. That's a joint podcast program that I'm doing with one of my strategic partners. That's a relationship building platform. They're on the software side, and we're designing it specifically for commercial insurance brokers. It's a little bit on the prospecting, building relationships. So we'll be bringing in insurance sales trainers, general sales trainers, software people, anything that has to do with building those relationships and getting in front of people, building your pipeline and the prospecting process and as a whole.
We were talking before. You are in the US. Right now, the US is fighting the corona pandemic in the very intense phase. Mm-hmm. But your business was always digital, is digital, and is not just not hurt by the crisis, it is even accelerated by it. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yes, I've been working, I guess, remotely on my own on a digital platform almost from the beginning, going back to 1995. So right from when the internet first started, and it's really evolved to that. And I think the one thing that I'm seeing right now, it's forcing, especially the people that I work with, the commercial insurance brokers, it's really forcing them to operate more remotely. In a lot of cases, if you're in a bigger city, let's say if you're an insurance broker in New York or Los Angeles, London, where have you, a lot of times to do the face-to-face commute to meetings, that type of thing, it sucks up a lot of your time during the day. And I think what I'm hearing from my clients is the clients actually like to work more remotely because it's not as much of an interruption of their day. So I think, the pressure was there to evolve to more of this, but I think the whole pandemic has accelerated that. And I don't think it's going to really return. I think that's going to be the mode of really doing business going forward. Yeah, we're still going to have face-to-face, but I think more and more you have to be comfortable with dealing with people digitally and online.
Strong. So we will talk about your 3 CEO tips. First,
okay,
why your LinkedIn profile is your personal brand, how you can use LinkedIn as a free source to boost your credibility, and how you can rally your team to help that process succeed. I'm super pumped. Let's go to the first one.
Okay.
Why LinkedIn profile and personal brand important?
Yeah, that's a good question. As I said, I work with a lot of commercial insurance brokers. That's really what I specialize in. And so they're in the B2B world. And you really have to have, getting back to what I was saying earlier, you really need to have a digital platform that you own, where you have a presence, where people can find you and you can establish your personal brand. And a lot of times, that gets lost in someone's website. It doesn't necessarily promote them personally. And what happens now, especially in this online world, and people are going to, if you get referred into them, you call them, you meet them at a networking meeting, what have you, they're going to Google you, they're going to look you up online. And what's normally going to show up is that LinkedIn profile. or the LinkedIn link because it is an authority site. And so when someone hits that profile, it needs to be polished. It needs to look like, hey, your prospect hit the right place. Not only that, LinkedIn has a lot of opportunities. I think that really less than 1% of the whether they're CEOs, individual salespeople, whatever, are really taking advantage of it to position themselves at credible as thought leaders and establish that leadership through either interacting with existing content in their space with strategic partners or clients or generating their own content. And then finally, the last piece is uh, very few, this is less than a tenth of a percent, really are pulling in their whole team, whether it's their sales team, support team, whatever, to really have a synergy to promote this as a group, to really promote each other, whether they're going after different accounts, they have different accounts within the business. But I think there's really an opportunity there to support each other, whether it's LinkedIn, whatever that platform might be, to really get the message out and support each other from whatever the content is or the leadership positioning.
I am super pumped to go there with you because we are also a team and we could use LinkedIn much more as a team. So I'm super pumped to hear your tips. Before we go there, we move to the section of our show, which is called the Strategy Award. If you can pick only one venture who is doing things differently, but the right way, who would that be?
I would say it's a fellow strategic partner that I'm connected with on LinkedIn, guy by the name of Andy Neary. He's in Fort Collins, Colorado, in the United States. He works with commercial health insurance brokers, and he has a tremendous presence on LinkedIn. He's very active. He has a podcast that he's doing. His practice really focuses in on the mindset and really having effective processes and habits that you need, whether you're running a business, whether you're in sales, whatever that might be. He's very consistent. You always see him on LinkedIn. He's very engaged. So he would be the person that I guess I aspire to being as good as he is on LinkedIn, and I fall short of that a lot. So yeah, he's the person that I would point out for that.
Thank you. And now let's go to the first CEO tip. Why is the LinkedIn profile this important in your thinking? And what are the things that you do when somebody works with you? What are the three main things that you install?
Good question. Three main things that I install is, first of all, I go through, I call it a 3x3 process. So the first thing we look at is really taking it from a strategic standpoint, really figuring out what your goals, what your vision, why are you doing what you do from a business standpoint, and why is it important to you? How, because we dig into that, because that gets into a lot of the things I talked about before, about mindset, about purpose, and creating those habits. Second thing we look at is, what is your target market? Who are you trying to reach? Especially on LinkedIn, it works well if you can hone and focus in on a target market. Third thing is really to nail down, I call it your distinctive value message. What is it that you do or say that's different from your competitors, other people in the market? From there, then you have that foundation to start to build, whether it's LinkedIn, whatever your platform is. Maybe your platform is best YouTube. Maybe your platform is best on a podcast. Whatever that platform is, you need to have a platform and own it. And it starts then with having some type of client facing story where you're really telling the stories, your success stories, championing your clients, and then owning that platform, understanding how the platform works. And from there, then having a a strategy or an action plan as to who you're going to connect with, and also a strategy for the types of content that you're going to create, so that you're not just, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but not so that we've had this thing where all you need to do is just blow out a bunch of content. I think now you need to be much more strategic about that, and you need to have a strategy where the content's building on content, and you have a purpose to repurpose that content and scale the content. And from there, then the third piece of it is you need to have something where you can boil it down to taking effective daily action, whether it's 15, 30 minutes a day, to move the process forward, where you're building relationships, filling your pipeline, whether it's engaging with people on comments, whether it's engaging with them on messaging, email, phone calls, whatever, and then having an effective follow-up process. Because a lot of times the sales happen because of effective follow-up. Now, you can't just expect that you're going to contact someone once and they're just automatically going to do business with you. The follow-up is the key, and you need to be committed to doing much more follow-up than you think you need to do.
What's your take on asking the first contact request? Should it be very generic? Just, hey, LinkedIn says you should be part of my network. Or should we be very specific? This is who I am. This is what I do.
Mm-hmm. That's something I test all the time. And it really depends on your strategy. If you have I think if you have an effective initial contact messaging, and it's specific, it's creating some type of curiosity as to the value that you're going to deliver, and it's personalized, I think that can be very effective. The other thing that can be effective is you connect without any messaging at all, but then you have effective follow-up messaging. So it depends on which strategy you feel is more important. Sometimes if you don't have that welcome or that contact message really dialed in, you can come across as too much of a sales push, and you can eliminate people from contacting with you, rather than just saying, hey, I'm just going to connect without any message, and then have more effective follow-up messaging.
What our team does is we have always 5 messages that we want to test.
Right.
And so we select a very precise segment. We write these 5 messages for them. And then we send out around 800 of these messages. And then we want to see, okay, who is resonating more with which one? So in this way, we get information about which topics people need, which words resonate better than others. And so this is one way we can test. And we have a simple spreadsheet where we test all that. We have the 5 messages. And then we go back to the LinkedIn profiles to find out the patterns. Because then we know, oh, this message resonated with 321 people. What do they have in common? Maybe we find something there. Sometimes we do, sometimes not. But if we find it, then this is relevant information. How do you do the testing and the learning out of your tests?
I think you hit upon it. I think you need to gather the data, whether it's on a spreadsheet, whether it's in some type of CRM, and you need to have a process to evaluate that. And I think also, to back up on that, you probably need to have, I call it, a perpetual client feedback mechanism, to really be getting feedback from your clients on the languaging, the messaging that really appeal to them, that worked with them. In other words, what did you say when you first contacted them that made them curious to want to continue the conversation? And I think you do that as part of your client onboarding system. And again, it becomes a whole process. So you're constantly evaluating, testing, and finding out what really is resonating.
Client onboarding system, one of our favorite systems. Some businesses don't have a client onboarding system. Can you explain a little bit more what it is, how you use it?
Yeah. Anytime you get a new client, or even if it's a prospect that didn't do business with you, but they were someone that was really in your sweet spot, I call them perfect fit clients, but for whatever the reason, maybe it was timing, whatever it was, they didn't do business with you. I think you need to get feedback. And we started What I educate my clients to start with is just simply asking for the net promoter score on a scale of 1 to 10. How likely are you to recommend me my services to a peer or fellow business associate? So it's a very non-threatening, low friction ask up front. All they need to do is give you a number. And then from there, you segment those people. The nines or the tens are your advocates or promoters. So you're going to get more feedback from those people and ask them for testimonials, ask them to give you LinkedIn recommendations. Where the people who are maybe less than a 9 or a 10, you want to get some feedback to find out, hey, what's missing? Why are you hesitant to recommend me or refer me to someone else? Where did I fall down? And that kind of feedback, they're going to give you the languaging of what's important to them. They're going to give you the languaging on the problems they face. They're going to give you the feedback on your process, on how they reacted to it. So I think that's valuable, but it needs to be a process where you follow it through the whole way. And from there, once you get those testimonials, hey, you need to prompt them for a LinkedIn recommendation, take it all the way through, get case studies from those people. And then finally, sitting down, whether it's over a phone call, if it's face to face, getting even more in-depth feedback from them that leads naturally into asking them to introduce you to other clients. So it's really having a process. And again, very few companies have that kind of sophisticated process to get that feedback and lead them into getting introductions or referrals, whatever you want to call them.
We love the NPS system. Also, we have it automated that every
Yeah.
client gets asked every 30 days. And we have added some questions like what's not working? What do you miss in working
Right.
with? And what's working really well? And this is gold. This information is gold because for us, it's the focus for the product team. We know what to improve this week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Your clients are going to tell you, and it's just it is actual gold, and it needs to be. I call it perpetual because it changes. You're constantly refining that messaging, and you're learning all the time. And so if you're not, you're probably going in the wrong direction. So you can always get better at this.
Your second CEO tip is that LinkedIn is a free credibility booster. What are the elements of credibility and how can we leverage them in LinkedIn, via LinkedIn?
I think the credibility boosters are, first of all, we didn't get into a lot of in depth on the LinkedIn profile, but your profile is the first credibility booster. People are going to assess you, especially now within 3 seconds. They hit your profile and, your background image. Does it look credible? Do you look like an authority on that background?
Oh, what's a good background?
A good background, I feel the most effective background is if you're in front of an audience speaking. It just shows tremendous authority, credibility. Uh, that's probably the best thing you can have as a background where you're up front and you're speaking to a group of people, because, it's that perception of people that everyone feels automatically. If you're a public speaker, you're an authority, you're an expert at your topic. So I think that's the first thing that creates a lot of credibility, a lot of leadership authority. Your headshot photo and your headline are probably the three things that create that 3 second instant credibility. And then you expand it from there through your about story that you tell, how you engage on content with other people in your market, strategic partners, and then the content that you produce yourself, whether they're LinkedIn posts, LinkedIn videos, LinkedIn articles.
And what mistakes do you see when, in terms of credibility, how can people destroy these first 3 seconds?
Having the blue background is an instant killer because it just shows that you really have dismissed LinkedIn as a platform, and I see that all too often with people, especially the people that I work with, the commercial insurance brokers, where they just they just really haven't taken any time to create any type of presence on LinkedIn, um, and or are not having a professional headshot. That, in other words, where you haven't nailed that 3 seconds, and so you really don't know how much business, how many opportunities you're missing because people just click away and they don't take your phone call, they don't engage with you. So I think you can lose a lot of business by not having that instant credibility.
Before we go to my favorite part, how we can rally our teams to support all this, what were some books or audiobooks that you found inspiring on a professional level?
Professional level, I would say the books that I look at and I go back to right now, kind of over and over again. First of all, Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. Um, Oren is in San Diego. He does high ticket merger and acquisition presentations, or multi-million dollar deals. And he wrote a book. He has a whole system on pitching, and it really gets into the psychology of how people think during the sales process or during the buying process. And a lot of times we get our presentations in the wrong order. We start out by talking a whole bunch about ourselves and how great we are and all that. And you really need to hook people in, first of all, in a presentation with some type of curiosity or some type of really big promise or a hook to really reel them in, and then really dive into their problems, and then finally getting into why you're really the person to solve those problems. you know uh, it really is a good, I think, something that you can constantly improve. The second book is uh, that I'm reading and I'm rereading is Never Split the Difference, by Chris Voss, who is the ex FBI profiler, negotiator. Just There's gold in there as far as your languaging, how you phrase things. When you're questioning prospects and leading them through a discovery process, or even during that whole presentation process. And a lot of this is you really need to practice it to get good at it.
I want to support that, especially because many of our listeners, they listen to audiobooks while they do sports or
Mm-hmm.
household stuff. And it is a wonderful audiobook. Some audiobooks
Mm-hmm.
are just really good also from the dramaturgical side. They are like
Right,
a
right.
movie. This is one of them. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. And what are some books that inspired you on a personal level?
The books that inspire me on a personal level, I keep coming back to Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I reread that book every year, sometimes multiple times a year. The other one is Psycho Cybernetics. Again, it's a great book about mindset and really having a perspective. I keep coming back to those books, and uh, I think they're essential personal growth books.
What struck you about psycho cybernetics?
I think the thing that strikes me about psycho cybernetics is I'm a golfer, and I'm a big visualization person, to the theater of your mind and visualizing the results, before you take the action. And I think there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of, you can set, let's say before you go into a meeting, you kind of start to play the movie about how you want that meeting to go, what you're going to say, how you're going to act, what responses are you going to get. And so I think you can really, your mind is very powerful, and you can set the frame of what's going to happen before it actually happens. And that's, again, that's a habit and it's a discipline. A lot of times we get sucked into all the negative things that can happen. What are they going to say? What if I blow it? Whatever. I think you need to flip the switch on that and really think about, hey, you're going into this with the best intention and the best results that are going to happen.
What did you recently change your mind about?
That's That's a tough question for me to answer because I don't easily change my mind, but I think my mind is constantly evolving. And I think it gets into my thinking about content and how much content you really need to produce. Uh, I- I'm more now leaning towards being having content that's, I call it core or evergreen content that you produce, and then having a way to repurpose that content. And that's why I'm looking more at the podcast, where I can take content and you record it on a video, you break it down into audio, you break it down into video clips, you break it down into an article. And a lot of this you can repeat the same messaging over and over again, but you're repeating it maybe in a different context. Maybe you're presenting a different case study, but it's the same application. A lot of times, it's not that you need to come up with a lot of unique new content or breakthrough content. A lot of times, it's repeating your core messaging until people actually get it. So I think that's the big thing and again, that's come through just a lot of testing and a lot of trial and error. It was, geez, you just need to blow out as much content as possible. I think, there's just so much noise in the marketplace. I think you need to be smarter about content nowadays.
This is so powerful because if you don't reuse the content, you are going to burn out. You are not a
Oh,
toxic company if you are an advisor, right?
yeah.
So I remember when I was trying for the first time, I saw Gary Vee explain his pillar strategy that he
Yeah.
reuses content 9 times. And I was like, okay, I'm going to build this. And I was searching for my starting point because I think everybody needs to find what comes natural to them.
Right.
Some it's speaking, for others it's video, for others it's writing. So I'm curious, what is your starting point? Because I find out mine's, it was speaking. The easiest thing for me was to take the phone, do the first Facebook Live, just spontaneously whenever it came over me. I just did it. And then the next time I listened to it and I had somebody writing it down and making it an article. And then from the article, I did something bigger, etc. What is your starting point and what are the reusing cycles?
I naturally think strategically by writing, first of all. But I don't think I'm not the fastest writer, although I'm good at it and I do it well, and that's how I think. The most effective and efficient way for me to do the content is by speaking, interviewing people, questioning them, but being prepared with, just as you and I have done this and you set it up, by being prepared, having a strategy with the questions, having a format or a process to do that. I think, again, with my clients who are in the sales business, they're used to interviewing clients to get information, to uncover the problems. They naturally are best at questioning and speaking with people. So I think for a lot of people, that's their starting or jumping off point, where they can then take that content to repurpose it. I think if you're a writer, it just becomes much more difficult to repurpose the content because you need to duplicate it. You write the article, then you need to record a video, then so you kind of are duplicating some of the content process if you start it from a writing standpoint.
Now you are starting a podcast. Why do you start a podcast in the first place? And how do you make sure, because there are so many podcasts starting right now, it's $1 billion industry. How do you make sure that your signal gets heard in the midst of so much noise?
Mm-hmm. You know, that's something my partner and I, he's on the software side with a company called 20 Miles in San Francisco in the Netherlands. And I think the first thing is, I think you really need to target a market rather than trying to be the Joe Rogan of podcasting. He already owns that space. We're really focusing in on the market segment, which is our audience, which are the commercial insurance advisors. So we just need to compete with the noise in that particular market. The other thing that we looked at is there are very few people in that market talking about just the prospecting part and the trust building, the relationship management and relationship building part of the sales process. There's a lot of people talking about, hey, once you get in front of the potential client, here's what you need to do. But how do you really get in front of those people? And how do you start to build those relationships? So that's really our focus. And so how we feel we can break through and I guess plant a flag in what our podcast is going to be about.
How can we rally our team to support all these activities?
That's something I've just started to work with a lot of clients about, and it's really, I think, first of all, you need to educate them. If it's LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, whatever the platform is, whether it's a podcast, hey, your team needs to be on board and support your initiatives there. If you're spending time to create content, your team, whether it's strategic partners, whether it's people on your staff, whether it's outsourced vendors that you're using, bring them on board and help pull them into promoting, sharing your content, commenting on your content, so that it spreads the word a little bit more widely and quickly. Because again, it's all about, especially on LinkedIn, it's all about, hey, if you can get some engagement in that first hour, get some comments, it starts to spread the messaging much more quickly and broader. That's just their algorithm. It's really comments in that first hour really spreads the messaging on LinkedIn. If you don't get those comments in the first hour, your content can just sit there and be dead and people aren't going to see it.
So it's about tagging or asking engaging questions or preparing upfront the team and saying we are going to post tomorrow or every day at 2 o'clock, or what
Yeah,
are
I think tagging, I think you can, if you do too much tagging, I think you look a little bit desperate on LinkedIn. You see that where people have, 50 people they've tagged on LinkedIn. That's just kind of goofy to me. Yeah, I think you can maybe direct message or email people, let them know through a Slack channel that, hey, here, we just put up this post and, here's the link to it, and engage with it. And I think it's part of educating your team up front that, hey, we're going to post at this time every day. So hop on it and give it a comment, share your insights on it. I think it's just educating and having a process to doing it.
I wasn't thinking about that. Having a time and then telling everybody, hey, two
Yeah.
o'clock.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You can set up, whether it's through Hootsuite or whatever, to automatically post and schedule out your posts on LinkedIn also. Which can save you a lot of time.
Absolutely. So where can people find you and who should work with you?
You can find me at waltgoshert.com. If you hit that, it'll take you to a LinkedIn profile scorecard is the first thing. And I work pretty much exclusively with commercial insurance brokers. I was working with a lot of B2B marketing agencies in the past, but I've refined that to really, I was an ex-commercial insurance broker myself for 15 years. So I understand that market, understand the process and what resonates, what doesn't, how to build the relationships in that market. So I really honed in and focused in on that. So any commercial insurance brokers, and mostly commercial insurance brokers who are going after what I call the middle market, where it's more substantial businesses that are generating usually anywhere in the U.S., anywhere 100,000 of annual premiums, whether it's through all their lines of coverages, plus, and it goes into several millions of premiums. So those are the clients that I tend to work best with.
Who should be my next guest on the show?
Next guest that I would recommend is a guy by the name of Josh Braun, very active on LinkedIn. He has and you'll find him at Josh Braun on LinkedIn, joshbraun.com. He has he does a great job. He's very consistent, very active on LinkedIn. He has a guide, badass B2B sales guide, I think is the name of it. And he just shares tremendous tips. He's always updating it. Uh, just a great person. He's a big believer in never split the difference. He's interviewed Chris Voss a couple times. He puts a lot of what Chris is educating and talking about into context of outreach messaging, email outreach, phone outreach, those types of things. So he's really someone that you can learn a lot from.
Thank you so much, Walt, for being here. Do you have something else you want to share with our audience?
Boy, that's a good question. I would say I pretty much have shared what I know in the short period of time to really focus it. I would just say the one thing I would share is, you know, own a platform and follow a process. Those are the two things that I would share. Just keep it simple, own a platform and follow a process and keep improving that process.
Thank you so much, Walt.